The air in the pit was thick, heavy, and almost suffocating. Every breath felt like swallowing heat and dust, and the faint glow of the bioluminescent walls only made the shadows seem deeper. Kayla, the young alien woman, pressed herself against the rough stone, her large eyes scanning the endless rows of cages. Her body ached, her skin scratched from the jagged edges of the pit walls, but it was her mind that struggled the most. Weeks of captivity had begun to chip away at her resolve, but she refused to let despair claim her completely. The pit was not merely a prison. It was a place designed to break the spirit. Captured beings were held here, separated from any kind of freedom, forced to live under constant supervision. Guards walked the stone platforms above the cages, their boots echoing in the hollow chamber. They were tall, with armored frames and cold, unfeeling eyes. Their primary goal was control, ensuring no prisoner dared attempt an escape. Kayla had been brought here after a failed rebellion in her home sector. She had tried to warn her people about the ruthless methods of the alien rulers, but her words had been ignored. Or perhaps they were too late. The authorities had come for her at night, swift and merciless, and now she was just another body in the pit. Yet her mind remained alive, sharp and defiant. She carefully moved along the edge of her cage, listening. Other captives lay in silence. Some curled into themselves, resigned to their fate. Others whispered quietly, afraid the guards might hear. Kayla's heart ached for them, but she knew that panic or hopelessness could be deadly here. She needed calm. She needed strategy. For days she had observed the routines. Guards changed shifts at predictable intervals. The sound of the heavy gates closing could mask movement if timed perfectly, and she had noticed something strange. Marks along the stone walls, almost hidden, like scratches that didn't belong to the cages or the rocks. They were faint, almost invisible in the dim light, but Kayla's sharp eyes caught them. Perhaps, she thought, there was a way out here. But planning an escape alone was risky. The pit was designed to prevent exactly that. Every path led back to the center, where the largest cages were kept, and where the most dangerous captives, like her, were confined. She had seen others try to climb the walls or squeeze through the narrow ventilation channels. Few succeeded. Most were caught, punished, or worse. Kayla had no illusions about what awaited her if she failed. Night in the pit was a different kind of terror. The guards were fewer, but the darkness itself seemed alive. Sounds echoed strangely, and shadows moved in ways that played tricks on the eyes. Kayla sat in a corner, her back against the wall, listening to the faint hum of the bioluminescent moss that grew in patches. It was her only source of light. Her mind replayed every detail she had memorized: the guard shifts, the gaps between patrols, the faint scratches on the walls. If she could time it right, she might just slip through unnoticed. But tonight, something was different. A sound subtle and unfamiliar drifted through the pit. Not the usual clank of armor or the groan of prisoners, but something soft, deliberate. Kayla froze. She tilted her head, trying to pinpoint the source. Her instincts screamed caution, yet curiosity pushed her forward. From the shadows emerged a figure unlike any she had seen here. It was a human. His frame was smaller than the guards, less imposing, yet there was an aura about him, calm, confident, and intelligent. He moved carefully, studying the layout, avoiding every creak and shadow. Kayla's heart raced. Humans were known in some sectors as explorers, traders, or warriors. Few had ventured this deep, and even fewer had survived. The human stopped a few meters away, crouching behind a large stone pillar. Kayla watched him, noting how he seemed unafraid of the guards above. He wasn't carrying heavy weapons. Instead, he had tools, gadgets, and a strange device that emitted a faint blue light. It scanned the walls, mapping paths and detecting hidden traps. Kayla realized, with a mix of hope and disbelief, that this human had come to rescue someone, or perhaps many. She had to act carefully. One wrong move and the guards would be upon them both. She whispered to herself, barely audible, Maybe help is here." She waited, watching the human navigate through the shadows. His movements were deliberate, almost patient, as if he had anticipated every obstacle. Kayla's mind raced. Could she reach him? Could she trust him? She had learned long ago that hope could be a dangerous thing in a place like this. Yet something in his careful, respectful manner suggested he was different from the ruthless beings who had captured her. Finally, he paused near her cage. He crouched and examined the lock. It was unlike anything Kayla had seen, a clever mechanism designed to prevent tampering. The human studied it for a long moment, then spoke softly, in her language. "I can help you, but you must stay quiet and follow my lead." Kayla's eyes widened. He spoke her language. How could he know it? But there was no time for questions. The guards above were shifting their patrols, and one would soon notice the gap. She nodded subtly, her body tense with anticipation. The human worked quickly, his hands precise and steady. After a few moments, the lock clicked. Kayla held her breath as the door swung open just enough for her to slip through. Together they moved silently, hugging the shadows, avoiding the guard's line of sight. Every step was dangerous, yet every step brought her closer to freedom. As they navigated the twisting tunnels, Kayla whispered, "Who are you?" The human smiled faintly, though his eyes remained alert. "A friend," he said. "Someone who believes no one should be trapped like this. We'll get out, but we have to be smart. The pit is full of surprises." Kayla felt a warmth she hadn't known in weeks. Trust. She followed him without hesitation, relying on his guidance and her own knowledge of the pit. They reached a narrow shaft hidden behind a false wall. The human pulled out a small device, pressing it against the rock. A panel slid open silently, revealing a cramped but passable passage. "This way," he said. "It's tight, but it leads out of the pit. Stay close and move slowly." Kayla nodded, squeezing into the narrow passage. The walls pressed against her, rough and cold, but she pressed on. Behind them, the faint sounds of the guards' voices reminded her that danger was never far away. Hours seemed to pass in that narrow, dark tunnel. They crawled, climbed, and squeezed through spaces barely wide enough to fit. Kayla's muscles ached. Her breath came in shallow gasps, yet she pressed forward. Every step was a step away from the nightmare she had endured and toward something new. Freedom. At last, the tunnel opened into a cavern filled with fresh air. Light from above filtered down, soft and golden, illuminating the human's determined face. Kayla took a deep breath, feeling air fill her lungs in a way she hadn't felt in weeks. The cavern was not completely safe yet. The alien world around them was still dangerous, but for the first time in a long while she felt hope. The human looked at her and smiled. "We're not free yet," he said, "but we're close. I've studied this land. There's a safe place not far from here. You'll be able to rest, heal, and plan what comes next." Kayla's eyes shimmered with tears. She had thought no one cared, that no one would ever come for her. Yet here he was, risking his life to bring her out of the darkness. As they began the final stretch towards safety, Kayla whispered, "Thank you for coming." The human nodded, a quiet understanding passing between them. No one deserves to be trapped, humans and aliens alike. We help each other. That's what makes us strong. For Kayla, these words were more than encouragement. They were a revelation. She had spent her life under the shadow of fear and oppression. She had learned to survive, but now she realized something more important. There was someone willing to fight for her, to believe in her, to bring her home. Together, they moved through the alien terrain, careful and alert, yet filled with a growing sense of hope. The pit was behind them now, a dark memory, but its lessons remained. Kayla would never forget the cruelty she had endured, but she would also never forget the courage and compassion of the human who had reached into the heart of danger to rescue her. And somewhere deep inside she felt a spark, something that promised that her story was far from over. Freedom had a taste she had almost forgotten, and now it was real. As the cavern walls gave way to open sky, Kayla looked out at the alien horizon. Strange landscapes stretched before her, and the wind carried scents she had never known. For the first time, she felt alive, and not merely as a captive or a pawn. She was a being capable of hope, of courage, and of choice. And beside her, the human walked silently, ready to guide her to a place where she could finally call home. The pit was behind her. The journey ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, Kayla believed in the possibility of tomorrow, and the human by her side was the first sign that it was a future worth fighting for. The open sky above was vast, strange, and alive with colors Kayla had never seen before. Jagged mountains loomed in the distance, their peaks glowing faintly in the alien light, and rivers of silver-blue liquid flowed like veins across the landscape. The air was fresher here, though tinged with scents unfamiliar to her senses. Every step forward reminded Kayla that the pit was behind her, that the darkness and despair could no longer hold her. The human walked beside her, his movements careful and steady. He seemed perfectly at ease navigating the rugged terrain, his eyes constantly scanning for dangers, both natural and sentient. Kayla had learned to trust him quickly. His presence was calm, confident, and strangely reassuring, a stark contrast to the cold cruelty of the pit guards. "We have to keep moving," he said, his voice low and calm. "There are patrols in this area. They'll be looking for any signs of escape." Kayla nodded. Her muscles ached. Her skin was still raw from the pit, but she forced herself to walk. Pain and fear had been constant companions for weeks, yet now there was hope. Hope she had almost forgotten. "Where are we going?" she asked cautiously, glancing at him. "To a safe place," he replied. "I know of a hidden camp not far from here. You'll be able to rest, eat, and recover. It's far enough from the pit that they won't find you." Kayla's mind raced. She had dreamed of freedom, of a place where she could breathe without fear. But now that it was within reach, doubt crept in. Could she truly trust him? Humans were strangers to her people, and yet he had risked everything to come for her. That alone set him apart. As they moved forward, the human kept a careful watch. He led her through narrow canyons where the sunlight barely touched the ground, across shallow streams, and past enormous twisted trees whose branches shimmered with faint light. He spoke little, letting Kayla absorb the alien world around her, yet his presence was steady and reassuring. At one point, Kayla paused, staring at a river of liquid that flowed like quicksilver. "I've never seen anything like this," she murmured. The human crouched beside her, watching the flow. "This planet is full of surprises," he said. "Some are beautiful, some are dangerous. The key is to respect them, understand them, and move carefully." Kayla nodded, realizing that she was not merely following a rescuer. She was learning from him. He didn't just act with bravery. He acted with thought, with intelligence. He was teaching her, even in silence, that freedom was more than escaping a cage. It was understanding the world, navigating it wisely, and finding allies in unexpected places. Hours passed as they traveled, and Kayla began to feel the first stirrings of something she had not felt for a long time: curiosity, wonder, and even trust. She asked him about his world, about humans, about why he had come so far. The human spoke carefully, explaining that humans often helped others who were in danger, even on distant worlds. His words were simple, but they carried conviction and honesty. "They need to know someone cares," he said. "Someone has to show them that not everyone is cruel. That's why I came for you." Kayla felt warmth spread through her chest. In the pit, she had been just another captive, another number in a cruel system. Here, she was seen, valued, and protected. She wanted to ask him more, to understand his world, but danger was never far. As they moved through a narrow valley, Kayla heard the faint hum of flying vehicles above. She froze, instinctively pressing herself against a rock. The human followed her lead, scanning the sky. The vehicles were patrol ships, small and fast, sent to search the surrounding lands for escapees. "They're close," he whispered. "We need to hide until they pass." Kayla's heart pounded in her chest. She had learned to move silently, to hide in plain sight, and now those skills were necessary again. They slipped into a dense grove of bioluminescent trees, their glowing trunks casting strange shadows on the ground. Kayla marveled at the colors, but she didn't speak. Every sound could betray them. The patrol ships flew overhead, scanning the terrain with bright beams. Kayla watched in awe as the human crouched beside her, adjusting a small device that emitted a low pulse. The beams seemed to avoid them, as if the device created a subtle shield of concealment. Kayla realized that this human was not only brave but clever, equipped with tools and knowledge she could barely imagine. When the danger passed, they continued their journey. Kayla asked the human about the marks in the pit walls, about the secret passages she had noticed. He listened carefully, nodding. "You're resourceful," he said. "That's why you survived so long. Your knowledge will help us get further without being detected." Kayla felt a surge of pride. For so long, her intelligence had been ignored, suppressed, and undervalued. Here it mattered. Her insights could save lives. Her mind, sharpened by survival, was finally recognized as an asset. As night fell, they reached a small plateau overlooking a valley bathed in soft silver light. The human motioned for her to stay low. In the distance, Kayla could see a cluster of small structures, partially hidden by the terrain. Smoke rose faintly from a single chimney, indicating life and safety. "That's our destination," the human whispered. "It's a safe camp run by allies who help those in danger. We'll be safe there, at least for a while." Kayla's relief was immense, yet caution remained. She had learned the hard way that safety was never guaranteed, and trust had to be earned. Still, something about this human, his calm determination and his careful planning, gave her hope she had not felt in months. They descended carefully, using narrow paths and avoiding open spaces. Every shadow, every rustle of leaves reminded Kayla of the danger they had left behind. She remembered the pit, the cold, the fear, the hopelessness, and she vowed never to return. Freedom, she realized, was not just about leaving a cage. It was about never allowing fear to dominate her again. Finally, they arrived at the edge of the camp. The human signaled for her to stay hidden while he scouted ahead. Kayla watched as he moved through the shadows, silent and precise, ensuring no threats approached. Moments later, he returned, smiling. "All clear," he said. "Come on, you'll be safe now." Kayla followed him into the camp, where others greeted the human with nods and whispers of respect. She noticed alien beings of different shapes and sizes, some injured, some recovering, all treated with care and dignity. The contrast to the pit was staggering. Here, life was valued. Here, freedom and safety were real. The human led her to a small dwelling, simple but clean and comfortable. He handed her food and water, and Kayla felt a sensation she had almost forgotten: relief. Her body relaxed for the first time in weeks, and she allowed herself to sit, to breathe, and to absorb the reality of being alive and safe. "You'll rest here tonight," the human said. "Tomorrow we'll plan the next steps. There are still dangers out there, and we need to be ready." Kayla nodded, grateful but curious. "Why are you doing this?" she asked softly. "Why risk so much for someone you don't even know?" The human sat across from her, his eyes meeting hers steadily. "Because it's the right thing to do," he said simply. "Someone needed help and I could give it. That's all the reason I need." Kayla felt her heart swell. In a universe that had been cruel and unfeeling, she had found compassion, courage, and integrity. The human had shown her that bravery was not just about fighting, it was about caring, acting wisely and protecting those who could not protect themselves. As she ate, she realized something else. This journey had only just begun. The pit was behind her, but there were still challenges ahead. The world outside was unfamiliar, filled with dangers she could not yet imagine. Yet, with this human beside her, she felt capable of facing them. Together they could navigate this strange land, confront threats, and perhaps even change the future for others trapped in places like the pit. Night fell over the camp, and Kayla lay on a simple bed staring at the ceiling. The stars outside the window shone brightly, each one a reminder of the vastness of the universe and the possibilities it held. For the first time, she allowed herself to dream, not just of freedom but of life, hope, and a future where she was more than a captive. The human quietly checked on her one last time before resting nearby, vigilant even in safety. Kayla watched him for a moment, struck by his quiet strength, his intelligence, and his unwavering commitment. She realized that humans were capable of extraordinary courage, even across the stars, even for strangers. And in that quiet moment, Kayla made a silent promise. She would survive, she would learn, and she would honor the trust this human had placed in her. Together, they were stronger than any threat, more clever than any trap, and more determined than any captor. The pit was behind her. The journey ahead was uncertain, but hope burned brightly, lighting the path forward. And Kayla knew without a doubt that the human beside her was not only her rescuer, he was the beginning of a new chapter in her life. one filled with possibility, courage, and a bond that would grow stronger with every step they took together. Morning came quietly. Soft rays of pale light slipped through the cracks in the wooden walls, falling gently on Kayla's face. For a brief moment, she forgot where she was. She blinked, her eyes adjusting to the light, and then remembered. The camp, the human, the escape. She sat up slowly, her body still sore, but her heart lighter than it had been in weeks. Outside, she could hear voices, low, calm, and friendly. The air smelled of cooked food and the faint scent of wood smoke. For the first time since her capture, Kayla felt peace. She stood, stretching her stiff limbs, and stepped outside. The camp was alive with quiet activity. A few aliens of different races worked together, repairing equipment and tending to small gardens that grew along the edge of the valley. Some greeted her with soft nods, others simply smiled. There was no fear here, no chains, no guards shouting orders. Kayla could hardly believe such a place existed. The human, whom she now knew by name, Eli, was near the edge of the camp, examining a small device that projected maps into the air. When he noticed her, he smiled. "You're awake. How are you feeling?" Kayla returned his smile, shy but genuine. "Better than before. I almost didn't believe this place was real." Eli chuckled softly. "It's real. We've built it far from the cities and scanners. It's not perfect, but it's safe enough." He motioned for her to sit beside him. The holographic map showed glowing lines of patrol routes and moving dots that represented search units. The alien rulers clearly hadn't given up looking for her, or him. "They're still searching," Kayla said quietly. "Yes," Eli replied, studying the map. "But we have an advantage. They're scanning open areas. They'll never think to look this deep in the western ridges." Kayla leaned closer, fascinated by the technology. "You planned all this before you came?" Eli nodded. "Mostly. I've been studying this region for months. I knew what they were doing to your people, and I couldn't just watch." Kayla's eyes softened. "You risked everything," he gave a small smile. "Sometimes doing what's right means taking risks." They talked for a while, discussing the nearby terrain, the pit's layout, and the captives still trapped there. Kayla's expression grew more serious as she remembered the others, the frightened faces, the quiet sobs in the dark. She clenched her hands. "There are still so many in that pit," she said. "We escaped, but they're still down there. They won't survive much longer." Eli looked at her thoughtfully. "I know, that's why I came back here, to plan a way to get them out too." "I didn't come for just one person, Kayla. I came to end that place." Her heart raced. "You mean destroy the pit?" He nodded slowly. "Or free the captives and make sure no one is sent there again." Kayla was silent for a moment, her thoughts heavy. She had dreamed of freedom, but now that she had it, she couldn't ignore those she'd left behind. Their eyes haunted her, the ones who didn't believe rescue would ever come. Finally, she said, "Then I'll help." Eli looked surprised. "You've been through enough. You should rest." Kayla shook her head firmly. "I know that pit better than anyone. I know the guards' shifts, the tunnels, and the hidden marks in the walls. If you're going back, you'll need me." Eli studied her determined face for a long moment, then nodded. "All right. We'll go together, but we'll need a plan." Over the next few days, Kayla and Eli worked tirelessly, using the holographic map. They reconstructed every detail of the pit Kayla could remember. She described where the guards changed shifts, where supplies were stored, and which tunnels were least watched. Eli listened carefully, adjusting the map to match her descriptions. Other camp members joined in. An older alien mechanic who repaired drones, a young scout who could move unseen through the forests, and even a healer who volunteered to care for any captives they managed to save. It became clear to Kayla that Eli was not working alone. He was part of something larger, a quiet network of people from many worlds who believed in helping others. One night, as they studied the final plan by lamplight, Kayla asked, "Why do you do this, Eli?" "Why help people who aren't even from your world?" Eli paused, thinking. "Because pain doesn't belong to one species," he said finally. "And kindness doesn't either. Where I come from, we've learned that what happens to one world affects all others. We can't turn away when we see suffering." Kayla watched him in silence, realizing that this was what made humans so different. They weren't driven only by power or fear. They were driven by choice. And Eli had chosen compassion. On the fourth night, their plan was ready. The group would travel through the underground tunnels Kayla had found before, They would reach the pit from below, avoiding patrols. Eli had built small devices that could disable the guards' scanners for a short time, just enough to get in and out. As they prepared to leave, Kayla stood beside Eli, tightening the straps of the small pack he had given her. "Are you sure about this?" he asked quietly. Kayla met his eyes. "I've never been more sure of anything." Eli smiled slightly. "Then let's bring them home." They set out under the cover of darkness. The night sky above shimmered with unfamiliar constellations, and the wind carried a faint hum that sounded almost like music. Kayla led the way through narrow paths and dense forests, her memory guiding them. The ground beneath them glowed faintly from the mineral-rich soil, lighting their steps. Hours passed. The team moved quietly, communicating with hand signals and short whispers. Every sound could mean discovery. Every flicker of light could reveal them. Kayla's heart beat fast, but she kept moving. The thought of those still trapped pushed her forward. Finally, they reached the hidden entrance Kayla had once discovered, a small opening half buried under stone and roots. She knelt beside it, brushing away the dirt. "This is it," she whispered. Eli crouched beside her, scanning the entrance with his device. "It's still stable. Good work." One by one, the group entered the narrow tunnel. The air grew colder, heavier. The sound of dripping water echoed softly, reminding Kayla of the pit's depths. Memories flooded back, the fear, the pain, but she pushed them aside. This time she was not a captive. She was free, and she was coming back not to suffer, but to save. As they moved deeper, Eli activated a soft blue light that illuminated the tunnel without drawing attention. Kayla guided them through twists and turns until the path opened into a large chamber beneath the pit. Above, they could hear the faint footsteps of guards and the distant clank of machinery. "This leads to the lower cages," Kayla whispered. "If we climb up through that shaft, we'll reach the main cells." Eli nodded. "You lead. I'll cover." Kayla climbed first, moving carefully through the narrow shaft. When she emerged, her breath caught in her throat. The familiar sight of the pit stretched before her, dark, cruel, and filled with silent despair. But this time she wasn't alone. Eli climbed up beside her, scanning the area. "We'll move fast. Once we open the first cages, the others will follow. We can't stay long." Kayla nodded and approached the first group of captives. When they saw her, disbelief filled their faces. Some whispered her name in shock. Others thought she was a ghost. "It's real," she said softly. "We're getting out. Follow quietly." Eli worked beside her, unlocking cages with his device. The captives moved silently, their fear slowly turning into hope. One by one, the cages opened, but freedom never came easily. Just as they reached the final group, a distant alarm echoed through the chamber. "A guard had noticed movement. They found us," Eli said sharply. "We have to move now." Chaos erupted. Lights flashed red and sirens wailed. Kayla's heart pounded as she guided the captives toward the tunnel. Eli covered their escape, using his gadgets to disable the approaching guards. Explosions of light filled the air, echoing through the pit. Kayla turned back once, just in time to see Eli blocking the path behind them. "Go," he shouted. "I'll be right behind you." She hesitated for only a moment before obeying. She led the others through the tunnels, her lungs burning, her heart racing. Behind her, she could hear distant shouts and the sound of metal hitting stone. Finally, after what felt like hours, they emerged from the underground passage into the open night. Cool air filled their lungs. The stars above shone like 1,000 tiny fires. Kayla turned around, and relief flooded her when she saw Eli emerge from the tunnel, dust-covered but smiling. "They're safe," he said, catching his breath. "All of them." Kayla's eyes filled with tears. Around them, the freed captives looked to the stars, whispering prayers, disbelief, and joy. For the first time in years, the pit was empty. Eli looked at Kayla, his face calm but tired. "You did it. You led them out." Kayla shook her head. "We did it together." The camp welcomed the rescued captives with open arms. Food, water, and healing were given freely. Laughter filled the air where once there had been only silence. Kayla watched the scene with quiet pride. As the night deepened, she stood beside Eli, looking toward the distant mountains. "Do you think they'll stop?" she asked softly. Eli shook his head. "No, but now they know there's someone who will stand against them. They won't forget that." Kayla smiled faintly, the stars reflecting in her eyes. "Then we'll be ready." For the first time, she felt not just free, but strong. The pit had tried to break her. Instead, it had forged her into something unshakable. And with Eli beside her, she knew this was not the end, but the beginning of something far greater. The ship entered Earth's orbit like a silent star cutting through the darkness. Inside, the hum of engines filled the quiet as the human, Ethan, piloted through the atmosphere. Beside him sat the rescued alien woman, Lyra, staring at the planet's blue and green surface with wide eyes. It was a sight she had never imagined, alive, peaceful, and bright. For so long she had only seen the colorless walls of the breeding pit and the dim light of captivity. Now she was free, yet her heart was heavy with disbelief. Freedom felt strange, too quiet, too gentle. Ethan noticed her silence and smiled softly. "That's Earth," he said in his calm voice.
Home. Home, she repeated, the word feeling unfamiliar on her tongue.
"It looks kind," he chuckled. Kind might not be the first word I'd use. But yeah, it can be. It depends on who you meet. When the ship landed in a clearing surrounded by green hills, Lyra stepped out slowly. The air smelled different, fresh and full of life. She could hear birds singing somewhere far off. It was overwhelming in the most peaceful way. She turned to Ethan, her voice quiet. "This place, it doesn't hurt my eyes." "That's sunlight," he replied. "Real sunlight. Not the cold lamps they had in that pit." For the first time, Lyra smiled. A small, fragile smile that seemed to break years of sorrow. Ethan took her to his home base, a quiet research outpost surrounded by fields and forest. The facility wasn't large, but it was warm and bright. Robots moved quietly through the corridors, and a few other humans nodded politely as they passed. When they entered the main room, a medic approached them. "You're back," she said, relief in her voice. "We were starting to worry," Ethan nodded. "She needs care. Food, rest, and safety. That's all." The medic smiled gently at Lyra. "You're safe here. No one will hurt you." Lyra hesitated but then nodded. She still didn't trust easily, but Ethan's calm presence gave her courage. For the next few days, she stayed in a private room with large windows overlooking a quiet garden. Every morning, she watched the sun rise and painted the sky in colors she had never seen before. The staff brought her food, soft blankets, and clean water. Everything was strange, too gentle, too good to be real. Ethan often visited, bringing her stories of Earth. He told her about mountains taller than the sky, oceans wider than her imagination, and cities full of light and sound. Lyra listened carefully, sometimes smiling, sometimes frowning. "Your people. You build so much. You fight so little," she said one evening. He leaned back thinking. "We've fought plenty," he admitted. "But we also learn. And we try to do better." She looked down at her hands. "On my world, only the strong survive." But strength was used to control, not protect. Ethan nodded. "That's not real strength. Real strength is when you stand up for someone else." She looked at him quietly, thinking about how he had risked everything to free her. He didn't have to. He could have left her in that pit, but he didn't. One evening, while the sun was setting and the room glowed gold, Lyra asked him a question that had been burning in her heart. "Why did you come for me?" Ethan looked surprised. "Because you needed help. That's all?" She pressed. "You didn't know me." "You didn't owe me anything." He smiled faintly. "You're right. But I couldn't just stand by. Sometimes that's all it takes to make a difference. You see something wrong and you decide not to look away." She was silent for a moment, her gaze distant. "No one on my planet would have done that." "Then maybe," Ethan said, "it's time they learned something new." Her chest tightened with emotion. "Maybe they will." As the days passed, Lyra grew stronger. She explored the gardens, fascinated by the flowers and creatures that lived without fear. She even began learning to speak human languages more fluently, her voice gaining confidence with every day. Ethan sometimes watched her from afar, seeing how she was changing. The scars of her past were still there, but her spirit was healing. One afternoon, she approached him while he was working on the ship. "You're leaving again?" she asked. He looked up. "Yeah, the Alliance wants a report. They need to know what's happening on your planet. Maybe we can help the others still trapped there." Her expression tightened with concern. "You'll go back?" "If I can make a difference, yes." She looked down. "It's dangerous," he smiled. "You think I don't know that?" "I know," she said softly. "But still, be careful." Ethan paused, sensing the unspoken emotion in her voice. I will. And when I come back, maybe you'll tell me more about your home. The parts worth saving. She nodded slowly. I'll try to remember them. That night she couldn't sleep. The sky outside her window was filled with stars, so many that she could barely count them. Somewhere among them was the world she had escaped from, still trapped in pain and control. She thought about what Ethan had said, about strength, about standing up for others. For the first time, she wondered if she could do that too. She walked outside, the air cool and silent. The grass beneath her feet felt alive, soft. She raised her hand toward the stars. I was nothing there, she whispered. But here, I can be something. Behind her, she heard quiet footsteps. Ethan had come out, his jacket thrown over his shoulder. Couldn't sleep? He asked. No, she said, not turning around. I was thinking. About home? She nodded. And about what comes next. He walked beside her, looking up at the same stars. What do you want to do? She took a deep breath. I want to help free the others. Like you freed me. He looked at her with quiet admiration. Then we'll do it together. She turned to him, eyes bright with purpose. Together? He nodded. You know their world better than anyone. You know how they think. If we work side by side, maybe we can bring them hope. Her lips curved into a true smile, strong, steady, and alive. Then let's bring them light. Weeks later, the ship was ready again. This time, it wasn't a rescue mission for one. It was a mission of liberation. Lyra stood beside Ethan in her new uniform, her head held high. The scars of her past remained, but they no longer defined her. As the engines roared to life, she looked at him. Ethan, she said quietly. Thank you. For giving me back my freedom, he smiled. No, you took it back yourself. I just opened the door. The ship rose into the sky, breaking through clouds and light, leaving the quiet fields of Earth behind. Ahead lay danger, challenge, and the chance to change everything. But this time Lyra wasn't a captive. She was a warrior of hope, and beside her stood a human who had proven that kindness could be more powerful than fear. As the stars stretched before them, she looked out the window and whispered softly, They will learn what humans are capable of. Ethan smiled beside her. They will. And with that, the ship disappeared into the stars, carrying with it the promise that even in the darkest corners of the galaxy, humanity's light would always find a way to shine.